Over all these years, the Far Cry game series has accompanied me and millions of other gamers throughout our gaming journeys. From the 2004 release of the first Far Cry till number 6 back in 2021. So by the time I started recording this video, this series has been around for 2 decades and served us well, more or less. I will share my experience I've had in the past 20 years and go chronologically through their releases with a tiny story recap for each one, although we only talk about the main title 1 till 6 and no DLCs, spin-off or in-between titles. I also want to talk with you about the future of this series, so make sure to stick to the end of this video where we wrap things up around the path of Far Cry. When the first Far Cry dropped back in 2004, I honestly couldn't believe my eyes. I don't know if you might have felt the same, but I was just blown away by the stunning visuals. But the memory also comes with some bad aftertaste. Around that time I was still gaming on a PC and remember barely which graphics card I had. The GeForce MX 440, I believe? Of course not a powerful GPU at all at that time, but all I could afford. Yet Far Cry managed that I had to lower my settings drastically to play this title. Didn't really matter at that time, because I was just glad that I even had a GPU which let me at least play the game. I can't remember my old CPU, but certainly wasn't powerful as well. Although I thought the graphics can't get any better. This is it. This is close to real. Of course, 20 years later proves me otherwise. But what Far Cry achieved back in the day was just new to my eyes. As Jack Carver, a former Special Forces soldier who is now a charter boat captain in the Pacific, I guess he couldn't get a normal job after the force, doesn't really matter, Carver was hired by a Valerie Cortez to bring her to a remote island. Although their boat got attacked and sank pretty quickly. Carver managed to escape the ship in the last minute and later wakes up stranded in an old bunker on that island. And of course it's not an ordinary island with friendly people live on. Mercenaries all over the place led by the villain character Dr. Krieger, who is practicing genetic experiments. And throughout your walkthrough, Carver will be introduced to his creations, or let's say monsters. Along your journey through the dense jungle, you discover all kinds of crazy stuff going on that island. And of course, as a former special soldier, Jack was able to defeat evil Dr. Krieger and leave the island together with Valerie Cortez on a boat. How romantic! But like I mentioned earlier, just a short recap for each title, so let's jump straight to Far Cry 2. Released back in 2008, about 4 years later, another graphical bomb dropped with the second title of this series. Not only that, Far Cry 2 seemed more like the first real experiment with an open world, and oh boy they nailed it at that time. The possibility we had in this first-person open world game felt almost endless, even if it wasn't as rewarding as a Souls game or Souls-like title is nowadays. But that's another story anyway. Far Cry 2 provided us with a vast and beautiful landscape. Visually stunning again, and for the first time in a video game where I couldn't believe how almost real the fire animation looked. But of course still struggling to get better parts for my PC, the era of my PC gaming days came closer to an end. Almost unable to run this game proper on my system, there was a decision to make after Far Cry 2, but more about this a little later. Sent off into a fictional African country, your protagonist will get infected with malaria and constantly needs to explore and look out for the medicine which boosts you and basically keeps you alive. The mission as a mercenary to assassinate the arms dealer called the Jackal. Along the way, you'll meet a bunch of characters and also need to complete missions for different allies to gain their trust. The decisions you make in the end will give you a different story outcome depending on how you deal with the Jackal. But if you want to explore a different ending, then maybe you want to save your game right before the final mission. All in all, there was a replay value guaranteed. With its open world character and a time to beat at around 20 till 30 hours, it also made an improvement to the first Far Cry, which took around 15 hours if I remember correctly. And here we go, with the definition of insanity in Far Cry 3. Probably one of the most memorizable characters and speeches in the entire series, and even outside the Far Cry universe in other video game titles. Vaas, known as Michael Mandu, who also played a fantastic role in the Better Call Saul TV series later on in his career. He not only provided us with the definition of insanity, he also managed to deliver a truly outstanding performance, which I hadn't really seen before in other video games. This character really got me till this day, and I believe I'm not the only one. A game which I probably played 7 till 10 times up until now. Although I do have to say that once you take off to discover the second area, the magic and the dense jungle disappear a little. But fortunately, you can always go back to the first area. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks like that, but if so, I'm okay with it. Far Cry 3, released in 2012, was also the first title in the series which I enjoyed on console. My PC days were over. The constant part upgrading led me to this decision, and I never looked back. But maybe that will change again. By the time I enjoyed Far Cry 3, it was on PlayStation, and today it's Xbox. I know that in general PC has way better graphics, but consoles just provide me with an affordable compromise as a casual gamer, and Far Cry games play wonderfully on those machines. Your playable character, called Jason Brody, gets stranded and captured on an island in the Pacific Ocean after a skydiving event goes terribly wrong. The place where he's stranded, called Rook Island, which is also under the control of Vaas Montenegro. Other than Far Cry 1 and 2, you're not a special force or mercenary. You're just a random guy who learns all his survival skills during his process to free his friends who are held in captivity. Jason escapes Vaas' little mini-prison and runs into Dennis, who introduces him to the Rykard tribe, a little group of native inhabitants of Rook Island who fight with you against Vaas' control. Along the story progression, you will be also introduced to another enemy called Hoyt Volker, who is a human trafficker and operates his business on Rook Island. Throughout the story, Jason learns all kind of different skills and grows from a normal young man into a machine who takes on the fight against Vaas and his entire group. In the end, of course, you make it back to your friends. But set them free or decide otherwise is up to your ultimate decision. To get to that point, you discover more and more about yourself and your surrounding characters. All in all, a fascinating story, played by great characters which keep up your curiosity till the very end. And I want to come back to this specific title a little later in this show. But in the meantime, I invite you to join this community by simply clicking the subscribe button. Join this community with your love for gaming. With Pagan Min as the villain, the next major title of the Far Cry series released back in 2014. This one also released only 2 years after Far Cry 3, which truly was a surprise because if you go back in the timeline, the break between the major title usually took around 4 years for each. But when it came out, I was into it from the very first moment. The opening scene still sticks to my mind till that day. With the arrival of Pagan Min in the first scene and then taking off in his helicopter was just awesome. Especially since developers used one of my favorite songs, Should I Stay or Should I Go, in this particular scene. That was one big reason why I loved the game right away. I remember when I was still in an active band and we played this song every once in a while. The relationship between the villain and your protagonist, called AJ, is something different this time. The history goes back to AJ's mother who passed away, but her last wish was to spread the ashes in the fictional Himalayan country Kyrat, Pagan's own little kingdom in some sort of way. Although Pagan actually has more of the good guy characteristics, if that makes sense. Yes, he is brutal in all sorts of ways, but developers wrote his appearance in a more best buddy way. And along the way, Pagan gets more and more aggressive with AJ, as he teams up with the Rebellion and destroys Pagan's little world step by step. Together with a rebellion called the Golden Path, you take out important outposts of Pagan Min's regime, and of course it comes with a choice which fates the outcome of the game. All this just to make his mother's will come true. Although one of the best things here is that you actually don't have to do any of this. You do have access to a secret ending of the game right at the start, if you just wait for Pagan's return after he takes care of an incoming rebellion attack. I know everyone knows this by now, but it's always worth mentioning. So what you can see here is that the formula of Far Cry is shaped up now. Fictional country, bad leader, rebels, and you be responsible for collapsing an entire regime. And that leads us to the next title in the series with Far Cry 5. I want to be completely honest with you. I did finish Far Cry 5, but actually 2 years after it had its release back in 2018. I mean, I started in 2018, but for a specific reason I lost interest in this series for the very first time. Kind of unusual for me to do so, because I'm actually a big fan of the Far Cry series. When they came out with the game and the setting where they placed a truly brilliant villain called Joseph Seed into the fictional Hope County in Montana, I was like, okay, cool, it takes place in America, cool idea. After like 7 till 10 hours into the game, I became to realize that they were changing the formula again by adding a more just cause style to it. Go here, destroy this silo, hold off a wave of enemy, and oh, while you do that, destroy a little bit more. Of course, this is all my point of view, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. 2 years later though, I touched the game again to finally finish it. I do have to say, it was a great game, besides the more or less useless side activities. Far Cry 5 proved again that they're capable of making visually stunning games and including a totally weird bad guy. Joseph Seed though is not the only enemy in the game. Followed by his doomsday cult called Eden's Gate, Seed comes with some companions in his backpack. His siblings, aka the Seeds, each are leader of a certain area of the open world map. Jacob, John and Faith, which you have to take out one by one. Here again you team up with a rebellion to fight against a dark cultist with several sub-leaders. Each one of them have fantastic roles to play in the game, and the actors behind it do an incredibly great job. Of course, at some point you are going to make it through the game and will face the finale. As it isn't a surprise for the series, Far Cry 5 comes with different endings as well. All in all, a visually stunning and cool title, although I think the direction of the game is changing a bit again. And while we're talking about changes, it's the perfect time to get to Far Cry 6, the next major title. Released in 2021, 1 year after the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series dropped, these consoles made you enjoy this game in a crisp image quality and lets you play in 60 FPS. The series of Far Cry always makes a huge jump when it comes to graphical improvements, and number 6 surely is no exception. When this game came out, I was so stunned again, and I was so excited even before the release to go back to a more jungle surrounding that I wanted to play immediately on its day of arrival. But then I wasn't quite sure what I should think about this game. I mean, it had everything I wanted. Cool protagonist named Danny, and awesome villain with Anton Castillo, aka Giancarlo Esposito, who is one of my favorite TV series character known from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, for example. I was so excited about the cast, the setting, graphics and the story idea that I wanted to explore as much as possible. But the more I progressed in the story and the side quests, I began to realize how actually silly this title has become. But let's talk about the story first, because a little later we need to dive into this specific title again and what it actually means for the series. As your protagonist Danny, a guerrilla fighter who joins the resistance known as Libertad, to fight against Castillo's regime on the fictional Caribbean island of Yara. A big, massive open world with so much beautiful landscape and so much to see. A feast just for the eyes. Anyway, the job is clear. Take out as much of Castillo's facilities, kill as many of his fighters and liberate Yara together with the Libertad. Along the way, you dive into the story of Castillo and his son. Castillo himself is a ruthless leader, who also wants to share his views with his son to teach him how to lead. The son, on the other hand, constantly questions this way of leadership and doesn't really want to be involved in conflicts like this, it seems. Actually, more a tragedy about a father who totally messed up parenting by showing his son only violence. I think the story between him and his father is much more interesting than the story of Danny liberating a country itself. But also, that's just my opinion. Far Cry 6 though suffers from his even more advanced Just Cause formula mentioned earlier in the video about Far Cry 5. Don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun with this title, but I think the developers wanted to address this title to another target audience. So let's wrap things up and talk about the way of Far Cry and what happened over the past 2 decades. From seriousness to silliness, it seems the developers of Far Cry managed to steer the ship towards another target audience. A younger generation, maybe? Let's take a closer look at Far Cry 2 and 3, maybe 4. Those were darker games with a darker story, where we as a player were confronted with twisted minds, gun traffickers, human traffickers, and mean characters behind it. Don't get me wrong, that happened in Far Cry 5 and 6 as well, but the way they showed it to the player has kinda de-emphasized the seriousness the story actually provides. Far Cry 5 with a cult leader in the States somewhere who controls a vast region with his own little prophecy army and not even the FBI or whoever can do anything about it. Or Far Cry 6 where you are supposed to bring a dictator regime to its end by taking out base after base with a crocodile as your companion or a crazy gone rooster. So the peak of this series still remains with Far Cry 3, it seems. Introducing Vaz as the character who's evil and twisted in the combination with human trafficking is just a dark story and has kind of a bitter aftertaste. Even though your protagonist was not a super soldier, mercenary, or have any other backgrounds with fighting an entire army. All in all, there was a great combination which shaped the series to what it is today. If we also take a look at the overall feedback, we see that the general reviews are going down a little bit. Not that we should give a lot to overall reviews in my opinion, maybe written by an older generation like me, who just remember the old titles were in some sort of way different than the latest release. But those bad critics exist and there's still a bar for a lot of people out there, and that is totally fine. I understand how hard it is if you grow out of a game series you used to love, and I still love Far Cry. Although, like I mentioned earlier, it might have driven towards a younger target audience. The decisions what kind of direction a game is going to go are made years back. Developing games costs time, money and effort. That for sure. And I think they can only assume if they are going to nail it in the future when the game finally releases. I try to be as neutral as possible and do not say that the decisions they make are good or bad. They know what they want from the beginning, but they also can't win over everyone. I am excited to see what the future of Far Cry will deliver us. One thing is sure, I am still all in and I at least try it. That is the only way to make sure if I like it personally or not, by simply testing for myself. Although I might wait for a sale next time. And where will the evolution of Far Cry take us next time? What do you think and where do you want it to be? Maybe we know the answer already by the time you watch this video because they announced Far Cry 7, 8, 9 or 10. But for me personally, it could get a little darker again. Right now, I would like to see a Far Cry 3 remake, because it's still my favorite title in the entire series. You want to know more about the villains of the Far Cry series? then you might check out the description below. I linked a video created by IGN which is very inspiring. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't watched it yet. And like I mentioned earlier, I welcome you to join this community. I invite you to see where this channel evolves as well. And I thank you for your support.